I was getting nervous, Greg. I couldn't see you, so I'm glad to see you around. Please hop on stage. Greg Wyler, one of the earliest, among the first pioneers of space entrepreneurship. Grab a mic, take a seat, make yourself home. Just gonna grab this. Test the mic just to see if it works.
Got me?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, welcome on stage, Greg. Try again.
Can you hear me testing?
Yeah.
Good.
Welcome to CYSAT 2023. I guess you're very familiar with France.
I can hear you, though.
You cannot hear me?
Not very well.
Okay, maybe I can see it here? Here's better?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Welcome to CYSAT.
Thank you. It's excellent to be here.
Yeah, it's great.
A beautiful place.
Thank you.
I think I want to come back and start my next company here.
Yeah, you've been to so this is the world's biggest startup incubator. For an entrepreneur like you, this must resonate. Like, this is the place things are happening. You see Google, OVH, lots of startups here. Yeah, thank you so much for being part of CYSAT 2023. When I started to think about the lineup of the next edition last year and to have top speakers of the industry coming to CYSAT and talk about space and cybersecurity, your name popped up because you're a famous space entrepreneur, as I mentioned. You founded O3b. That was back then. I read the idea was in 2005 to connect the unconnected in 2005. To me, this is amazing. What a visionary you've been for really the space business. O3b turned out to be a huge success. You sold it for $3 billion to SES and then moved on to OneWeb. Also, as we know, now becoming one of the largest NGSO system operated now by Eutelsat. And now with your latest venture, it was the perfect occasion to welcome you on stage to talk about eSpace. So I'm very curious, with all these experiences, O3b, OneWeb, what triggered you to create eSpace? What was missing on the market that you identified as a pain point? What was the motivation behind eSpace? And what is eSpace? What are you guys doing?
Well, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it, and it's great to meet everybody and talk. So O3b was about, it really came out of experience where I had gone to Africa after selling my first company and noticed there was a real need for broadband, a desperate need for the schools to be connected, a desperate need for people to have connectivity in order to build their economy. And there was no fiber around, and I tried to run fiber in Africa. It was very hard. So I decided to look up and build a satellite system. Now, I knew nothing about satellites. So I went around and asked people and realized that they weren't, well, so one experience I had with one major company, I went and I talked to somebody who was doing the RF design for the satellites, and I said, do you have DSL or cable modem at home? And he said, I don't know, what's that? And I realized there's this massive disconnect between the engineers building satellites and how a full system works and what the needs are. So I became really energized at that point to build O3b. Okay. And I didn't really worry about people telling me it couldn't be done, because the facts bore out that it could be. We did it. It was super hard, but it was super fun. And it had a big impact. And I'm really proud of what SES is doing with O3b now. But that was about getting big antennas to telecom headends. And then with OneWeb, I wanted to get the system smaller. And what I noticed when I built O3b was that we basically just took geosatellite parts and put them in an NGSO system. So it was big and it was heavy and it was expensive. And when I set the goal for OneWeb, I said, we're going to build all these other parts differently. We're going to make them smaller. We're going to build a factory to do 30 to 60 satellites a month. And we're going to design the parts so they all can fit together. And people thought it was crazy to build 30 or 60 satellites a month. And this was 2012. But because of my history, a couple companies listened to me, and Thales and Airbus, and they listened to me. And we struck up a deal and eventually built it. So I don't really tell much about eSpace. We've been trying to be under the radar, right?
Yeah. I wasn't able to find much information about eSpace, so I'm really glad that you are here to explain, tell us more about this.
first of all, I wouldn't be doing eSpace if I couldn't do something magical. So it has to be something really novel, really, it has to be, good engineering is indistinguishable from magic. So when we do come out with it, assuming we can get what we want done, it should be something that's unique and novel, and there's nobody who's covering our field right now. We talk about IoT, and we'll do that, but that's sort of part of our mission. So we've raised about 100 million. That was pretty straightforward. We've got about 135 people, mostly in Europe.
When did you launch the company?
About a year and a half ago. So I think we'll probably raise a little more money this summer. We've got people who want to invest, and I think we talk to the board. We'll do that. And we're going to hopefully get our first pre-production out early next year, pre-production satellite, and start testing some systems and demonstrating some capabilities that we are on a path to deliver.
But tell us about the magic. What does he do? It's about connecting objects, or what is the next level compared to what you've done with O3b and OneWeb?
There is nobody in this room that wants to tell you more about that than me. Unfortunately, we got a lot to do. We got to make the magic happen. It's on a good path. We've got some very, very large customers, including governments, and we've got like 10 of the largest companies in the world in their fields that have already, their world's going to change because we exist, so we're working pretty closely. We do have a contract with Kinéis, which I think is public. We've got a contract with the European Space Agency and a few others that are somewhat public, and other governments, but we're just heads down, literally just heads down building the system.
Anything you can tell us about the architecture of the system? I've read that the size of the satellite is extremely small. The number of satellites flying is extremely high. Can you tell us a bit these decisions?
So we are building communications capabilities. We have built up I'd say we have about 60 people right now just doing our 5G software. It's really 6G. We're way out in release 19, release 20. But they're in Germany, in Duisburg, also in Toulouse. So we own the entire stack. So all the software, full stack, we have, and we're doing all the software ourselves across the entire system, the TT&C, the payload, the core, all of those things. And it's really hard. It's super hard. I mean, we're basically planning at least 30,000 satellites, each of them operating their own networks, their own systems, super dynamic in the way they move around, in the way they manage customers. The security is a big deal. We've got the attack vectors, the surface areas for satellites is so huge. It's like really hard to fathom how many different ways you can kill a satellite system, and people are kind of they're kind of making their own satellites worse and worse. The satellites are getting bigger. They're getting bigger cross sections. They're getting more vulnerable, and there's going to be a day. One thing I've realized is that the science fiction writers are always right.
Yeah.
We're just sort of following what they write. So, go read Isaac Asimov. You got the whole story of what happens with the world. Read Jules Verne. Fantastic. So if you read Jules Verne, like the Propeller Island, for instance, he predicts the internet. He wrote that in 1872, I think. And he writes about the internet in 1872. And when they're on this Propeller Island, which is a giant boat that people live on, they go to the town. And in the town, the visitors say, well, where are the people? And they say, oh, no. People don't come to the stores. They just order, and it gets delivered to them. It's amazing. So all of this stuff's been done. So everything that we want to do in humanity has already been written, and we're just sort of actors acting out the play that they've written.
Definitely, science fictions have been also talking about cybersecurity and really the worst case scenarios, like global cyber attacks. Research papers have shown that if the satellites are shut down tomorrow, it's as powerful as a total blackout from electricity. coming off from the grid. So we really depend strongly on satellites today, on their nominal operations, and cyber is becoming more and more important. Tell us, as your vision as an entrepreneur and space visionary, has cyber been in the back of your mind before? Is this a new topic for you? Did you realize? How did you come across cyber? Was it talking to clients, talking to investors, talking to regulamentations? What is the driving force for you to build a secure constellation? Why do you care about security?
So cyber is sort of, it's the beginning case. It's like, but there's a lot more than just cyber, right? Because probably the first step is kinetic. And so one thing that we announced is that we will be building sovereign constellations. So countries will have their own systems. Why? Because the best way to deal with cyber is through an air gap. You want to keep other people off your network. So you got sort of three areas, right? You've got kinetic issues, and China has now up to 300 Dongning 3 missile silos with anti-satellite missiles. So the kinetic thing is real, and if China or Russia or somebody else doesn't do it, we're going to do it because people are building these gigantic satellites with a lot of mass and a lot of energy. They're going to crash into each other. No one can stop them because the regulators are still sleeping at the wheel on this issue. So you've got the kinetic issue, then you've got the attack surface area of satellites, both from the TT&C and then the payload side. And that's where you got to get everybody off on the payload side, which is why you need to have, as a country, you need to have your own sovereign system. You also need your sovereign system because, as we've realized, every single economic thing is a weapon. The Visa card is a weapon. It can get shut off because it's not, if it's not controlled by you. So as Ukraine recently found, somebody can shut off their network if they don't own it. So this has become a really big issue, and that's why things like IRIS² and stuff are saying we need to own our own. And then you've got the biggest vulnerability of satellites are the gateways, outside of kinetic. The kinetic vulnerability is there. You got kinetic from the mechanical, you got pseudo-kinetic from state actors who will put satellites up, come right in front of your satellite and blast it with RF or do chemical sprays. There's a whole bunch of anti-satellite satellites that are out there in the market from state actors. But the largest attack surface area is the gateway. So one of the things that we've done is we have no gateways.
Can you explain that?
So we decided, we said, look, this is the biggest attack. There's two big ones, right? There's kinetic, so let's get the surface area down so that you can't hit us. And then there's the gateway, which is a giant vulnerable elephant sitting there to be eaten. So we've designed all of our systems to get rid of the gateway. So everybody is a gateway or not, as they like to be. We don't have any critical gateway type infrastructure in the network. It's also 28% of the network cost. So if we can get rid of the gateways, we can get rid of the costs.
And maybe, I don't know if you can comment further on how cyber is important for your clients. Do you intend to work with MODs, DODs? Did they ask you specific cyber, like, did they mention either you have this and we are in business, or you don't, and then we talk to you later?
So for our customers, we'll have a whole range of customers, but for the government customers, it's super critical because they know that if state actors come after them, they can take out networks. So it's incredibly important to have all aspects of all your vectors dealt with. And that's a really tough job. I don't think very many satellite companies have really looked through every attack vector, right? And you have to go just line by line, and the list is long of ways of getting into the network. And so, and even to the point of actual individuals who are planted there. So you've got, that's critical for the states that we deal with. The large companies we're dealing with are really so important in their field that they are like state actors in terms of importance. if you shut down transportation, if you shut down logistics, if you shut down critical infrastructure, they're weaponized. They ruin economies and they harm people in great levels. So they also have to be operating as potentially threatened targets in the new world.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point. We see it at CYSAT every day, like building a constellation with security by design is a big amount of work, and this is also the best way to prepare yourself for the future and to become more resilient as much as possible. Maybe I would be very curious to have your opinion on the Viasat attack last year. That was the big hot topic at CYSAT last year. It still is today. The attack by Russia on the Viasat network. What was your reaction to this? Was this for you a game changer or something that triggered the fact that, oh yeah, cyber is now becoming real and this is something, or is it something you expected to happen, or what was your?
You're talking about the CYSAT takedown, right? That came through the gateway.
True, yeah, true.
Gateways are easy. They're really easy.
Get rid of the gateway.
Might have a fence around them. That's it. I mean, if you don't go in and take it out, if you don't inject something in there, you just throw something at it or drive a truck into it. There's so many ways that a gateway goes away. And it's like a key point and a weakness. Inside of countries, it's a weakness because they're so easy to access even from a foreign actor or somebody who's just gone nuts. So systems have to have no single point of failure. And that's something that has to be looked at and carefully considered. The problem is, will people pay for that? Will governments pay for that? Will consumers pay for that? Unclear. I think governments are leaning in harder now, and they're going to start having more. You saw FIPS and federal protection stuff. So they're leaning in harder on it, recognizing that's a big issue. But we'll see.
Yeah. For you at eSpace, do you see commercial space players that are tapping more and more into MOD, DoD funding, and having the goal to serve governments as a market opportunity, as a business opportunity? Is this the majority of the business for eSpace, MOD, DoD, or do you target other players or verticals? Can you tell us a bit who you're aiming for? What is your ideal customer?
So we are very broad in our use cases. Yeah. So it's really everybody in this room will affect everybody's life. The governments and the large companies are leaning in. So that's who we're focused on initially to make sure that we can achieve certain goals. They'll lean in harder and they'll do early testing. So we're doing a bunch of demonstrations, tests, a lot of validation, a lot of working with them to understand issues. We're dealing all the way down to the combatant level and the warrior level, all the way up to the senior leadership of the country, at all levels to make sure that we are meeting their needs and requirements on a broad scale. But that's just because they're leaning in now. We will certainly be in many other markets.
We're going to talk about Iris Square this year. This is the hot topic of CYSAT. Is this an opportunity for you at eSpace to be part of this Iris Square program?
Yeah, so we're a French company, eSpace SAS. So we're perfectly suited to participate. We have a very novel solution, and everyone is very aware at Iris Squared of our solution. We've had many invitations and conversations. So I think, I can't predict what will happen, but I suspect we may play a role. I hope so.
Yeah, well, we have people from the Commission this afternoon, and also people from ESA and USPA explaining the role of the two agencies in building Iris Square. Maybe we've seen all of these constellations historically targeting broadband, and now we're trying to connect also devices that require less bandwidth, and we're looking at narrowband. What is your approach towards serving this new market with eSpace?
So we're neither broadband nor narrowband. So we've staked out a new claim. We call it midband. So that's where when you see the 10 megabit per second, that's us. That everything but Netflix type of capability. And you have to give up some things and you gain others. And so there's a whole suite of capabilities that we're bringing out to the market in very novel ways that you will not expect, that we hope to do. We're not done yet. It's not there yet. But we're on a very, very good trip to get there, and excited by it. So we're really staking out a whole new world. It's not the same. There's no other company that does this type of thing. And frankly, if we couldn't do something really interesting and fun and magical, like why would I do it? Like why? And our whole team is about building magic, right? So we're inspired by that opportunity to make a big impact.
So maybe just to clarify, so you mentioned part of the company is in France, eSpace SAS, in Toulouse, I believe?
In Toulouse, yes. We're based in Toulouse.
I think you even have colleagues at CYSAT. You have colleagues from
there's
eSpace.
Colleagues here from eSpace. They're all over.
Yeah.
We're hiring. Did I mention that? We're hiring. So if you're an excellent system engineer, you like software programming, come on over.
So
and we're hiring.
So building the company in France, also in the US?
Yes.
And can you clarify what's happening in Africa? I read that you purchased some of the spectrum bands from African countries. Maybe can you explain?
So we're active globally. We've been all over the world. We have a base in Africa for sure. We've announced a few market access. We were getting market access. Many countries are now stepping up and providing market access. We have conversations with them. They see the need. The requirements that we're meeting that there's a big gap of requirements that we can achieve. And so that's helping us a lot in the market access. We have a US, but it's separate. It's a partner company from the French company. So they're each independent, but they share as they're allowed to share, right? So, and I've built two companies, both OneWeb and O3b. We're largely in Toulouse area in France. And so I've been very involved in this for a long time in that area.
This is the perfect transition talking about Africa. If you look at the demographics, most of the people here are younger. You have kids?
I've got 5 kids.
How do you inspire them to join the tech industry? And maybe linking also that with cybersecurity, and also maybe the hiring you're doing at eSpace with young talents. How do you recruit them? How do you handle the fact that you have to build at some point also a security team? What is your plan there in terms of talent, really?
So, if you get to know me, you'll realize that I'm a full-time dad. So my kids go everywhere. They're really a huge part of everything that's going on through all my companies. The way to have them, they're 8 to 18, and I have them very involved in everything we're doing. And in terms of inspiring, the inspiration for them, I hope, my goal for them is to find their authentic passions. I want them to find the things that they want to do, and then my job is to just amplify. So my daughter is we lived in Rwanda last year, Africa. My daughter, 17, both of my 2 older kids go to Stanford Online High School, so it's online. And she started 35 FIRST Robotics teams. Now, FIRST Robotics is a competitive robotics thing. And so she started 35 teams in Rwanda and 350 kids, and had a huge, for Rwanda, a national competitive robotics event, which went really well. Then got sponsored by UNESCO, and I think the ITU is hopefully going to jump in soon, and a whole bunch of others jumped in because it was such a success. And then they're going to do 500 teams next year. Wow. So the goal, and she's raising $1 million right now, so pitch in if you like. It's called STEM Inspires, and she's raising $1 million to build 500 teams next year, which will do 5,000 kids a year in Rwanda entering into competitive robotics. And this is very serious, this competitive robotics stuff. If you know FIRST Robotics, you'll know how real this technology, these capabilities are of the kids. And we just, last week, her team won the top award in Houston. There's 87,000 teams. There were 40,000 people in Houston, kids, in Houston who spent the last 6 months building insanely complex robots for a 4-day robotics event. It was beautiful. So I try to get them and let them go, right? Let them do their thing.
It's also one of our mission here at CYSAT, education, right? Like we need to raise awareness about security in the space industry. We invite all students for free at the event. There are about 30, 40 students today and tomorrow from various schools, engineering, but also business. So it's also a goal to really educate these people about cyber. Time is almost up. I have 2 more questions, Greg. What can we wish you for eSpace? What are the next big milestones for the company? Raising funds, projects, Iris Square, what is on your roadmap?
So for us, it's upcoming launch in the not too distant future. Everybody's beeline geared on that.
When is it again?
We're not announcing the win yet because I'm always wrong. When I sit with my investors, I say, whatever I tell you, I'm wrong. It's going to be longer and cost more than whatever I say. So they appreciate the honesty. So, and I'm an investor in my own things as well, so I tell myself that. But we've got launches. We've got Iris Squared is a big thing coming up, and we'll see how we do, or what we're going to do with that, if anything. Don't know yet. And then we did agree to raise some more money, so we'll raise a little bit more money this summer. We haven't started yet, but I think they already have that rounded up. So we just talked to a few of our investors and a few other people and told them we're going to do it, and people started saying, yeah, we're in. So we did a round in December, and it was up 2.5 times from the year before, and this one looks like it's up as well. So we're getting good traction from the investor world, but I still think we're way at the beginning of our journey. We're really early on our journey.
Do you have any number you can share about the goal for you to
what?
Your goal to raise funds to make really eSpace an operational constellation and service? How much are you looking for?
Right now we're small dollars. You know, it's like under 100. We don't need a lot. We're fine. We've actually got a bunch of contracts coming in, which is kind of interesting. We didn't expect that, but we're happy with it. So it's all small dollars at the moment. We'll do a big raise at the right time if it's needed. We actually, interestingly enough, I'm not sure I need it. I'm not sure we have to. We'll see. The contracts are coming in faster than the money's going out. So people are wanting our systems. And so we're pretty happy about that for the moment. But fingers crossed it continues this way.
Super. Best of luck with eSpace. One last question. We're in France, in Paris. Do you have any favorite French wine or French food? Toulouse, cassoulet. Are you a big fan of the Toulouse cuisine? Or do you...
Well, I love Toulouse. As people may know, I've lived for the past 15 years in France. So I live in the little part of France over in the Caribbean called Saint Barthélemy, and enjoy and I'm here often. My grandmother was French, so I've got half the family on that side. So, and I truly enjoy, especially the summer. The winter's a little dodgy, but you know, the summer is super.
Thank you so much, Greg. I was very happy to have you at CYSAT. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Greg. And now...